Priscilla Presley speaks again about the life and tragic death of Elvis Presley, the man she once loved and shared a deep history with. From their early days to the final moments at Graceland, she reveals memories and shared moments with the king of rock and roll. What did she say? Join us as we visit Priscilla in her recollection. A chance encounter that changed everything. It all goes back to a fleeting moment, something that once felt ordinary, now frozen in memory. The year was 1959 in West Germany, when a young teenage girl named Priscilla stepped into a small gathering. She had no idea that this quiet evening would place her face to face with one of the most recognized men in the world. At that time, Elvis Presley was already an international sensation, admired for his music, films, and unmatched fame. Yet, in that phase of life, he stood not on a stage but in a military uniform, serving in the United States Army, far removed from flashing lights and cheering crowds. Priscilla was just 14, the daughter of a military officer stationed nearby. Elvis was 24. Their lives, shaped by entirely different experiences, briefly intersected in that intimate setting filled with music and conversation. To her surprise, Elvis did not feel like a distant legend. Instead, he appeared warm, attentive, and genuinely present. He shared stories, played music, and created an atmosphere that felt both exciting and personal. She was captivated. Meanwhile, Elvis seemed to find a quiet sense of comfort in her presence. During his time in Germany, he was coping with the loss of his mother and adjusting to a life away from fame. After that night, their connection deepened steadily. Priscilla began visiting him, always under supervision, with strict rules from her cautious parents. Elvis assured them of his intentions, promising care and clear boundaries. What grew between them was not rushed romance, but something built through long talks and shared moments. Even after Elvis returned to the United States in 1960, the bond remained alive through letters and rare visits. Looking back, it all began so simply, yet it quietly set the course for something far more profound. A new world behind the gates. When Priscilla Presley finally made her move to the United States to be closer to Elvis Presley, their relationship stepped into an entirely different chapter, one no longer defined by distance, but by everyday reality. Arriving in Memphis as a teenager, she entered a life built around Elvis's routines, his career, and the carefully controlled environment he had created. At the heart of it all stood Graceland, more than just a home. It was both a private retreat and a place constantly shaped by the weight of fame. Life inside Graceland did not follow a typical structure. Everything moved according to Elvis's rhythm. His schedule was unpredictable, often keeping him awake throughout the night and resting during the day. Gradually, Priscilla adjusted, reshaping her own routine to match his. Even simple things, meals, conversations, quiet moments, happened on his time. Over time, it became clear that the entire household revolved around one central presence. While continuing her education in Memphis, Priscilla found herself surrounded by Elvis's close circle, his trusted entourage. This group, made up of friends, employees, and loyal associates, played a constant role in daily life. The atmosphere they created was filled with music, activity, and social interaction, leaving very little room for privacy. Time with Elvis was rarely exclusive. It was often shared with those who were always around him. As their bond grew stronger, Elvis began influencing how Priscilla presented herself. From her clothing to her hairstyle, he expressed clear preferences, guiding her toward a look that reflected his own sense of image and glamour. Over time, this influence extended into daily habits, shaping a pattern where she adapted herself to meet his expectations. Their relationship unfolded over several years before marriage, marked by both closeness and separation due to Elvis's demanding career. When they finally married in 1967 in Las Vegas, the ceremony was intentionally small, followed by a reception attended by close associates and selected guests. Marriage, however, did not ease the pressures. It introduced new ones. Elvis's career remained intense, filled with film work, recording sessions, and live performances that required constant travel. Even at home, his time was divided, leaving little space for a conventional family life. Priscilla would later reflect on how much Elvis valued loyalty and control. He preferred familiar surroundings and made choices that kept his world stable. While that brought a sense of security, it also limited independence, as much of life was shaped by his preferences. Still, their time together was not without meaning. They shared experiences, traveled, and built a home that became iconic in American culture. To Priscilla, Graceland was both a home and a stage, a place where private life and public image constantly overlapped. And as the years passed, it became clear this story was only getting more complicated. A shift between family and fame. In 1968, Priscilla stepped into a new role as she gave birth to their only child, Lisa Marie. Her arrival brought a fresh sense of purpose into their lives. Suddenly, everything inside the home carried a different weight. Priscilla was no longer just a partner, she was a mother, responsible for raising a child within a world shaped by fame and constant change. Elvis welcomed his daughter with genuine affection. Those close to the family often recalled moments where he showed a deep emotional bond with her. He spent time with Lisa Marie, wanting to share parts of his world while still trying to shield her from its overwhelming nature. Yet, his presence followed familiar patterns. His demanding schedule, personal habits, and ongoing responsibilities meant that his involvement came in waves. There were times of closeness, but they were often followed by long periods where his focus shifted elsewhere. As Priscilla devoted herself to motherhood, she began to recognize a growing distance within her marriage. Elvis's career was entering a new stage, driven by live performances and increasing public demand. This required frequent travel, keeping him away from home for extended periods. Even when he returned, his routine remained centered on late nights, daytime rest, and the constant presence of his inner circle. Over time, this imbalance placed strain on their relationship. Priscilla later reflected on a quiet loss of identity. For years, she had adjusted to Elvis's preferences, shaping herself around his expectations. Gradually, it left her feeling disconnected from her own sense of independence. During this period, she started looking beyond the boundaries of Graceland. She explored new interests and connections outside of Elvis's world, searching for experiences that allowed her to define herself on her own terms. It was not an immediate transformation, but it marked a meaningful shift. Meanwhile, Elvis remained deeply committed to his career, focusing on performances, recordings, and maintaining his public image. At the same time, he faced personal struggles, including reliance on prescription medication and ongoing health concerns, which affected his energy and emotional stability. By the early 1970s, the distance between them had become undeniable. Their connection was no longer what it once had been. Still, the relationship did not end abruptly. It continued, shaped by shared history and mutual respect. In 1972, Priscilla chose to leave. There was no dramatic confrontation, only a quiet understanding that things could not continue the same way. Their divorce was finalized the following year. Even after parting ways, their bond remained, especially through Lisa Marie. They stayed connected, no longer as husband and wife, but as two people linked by a past that neither could fully leave behind. For Priscilla, this was a turning point, a moment where she began stepping out of Elvis's shadow and into her own life. And this journey was far from over. The hidden weight behind the spotlight. For Priscilla, truly understanding Elvis Presley meant recognizing the pressure that surrounded his life long before she became part of it. By the time she entered his world, he was not on the rise anymore. He had already reached the peak. He stood as one of the most recognized figures in entertainment, with fame that extended beyond music into film, television, and global culture. From the outside, it all appeared powerful and controlled, but from within, it carried a very different reality. Elvis's career had surged rapidly during the mid-1950s, fueled by hit records, television appearances, and a performance style that drew intense public reaction. His voice, image, and presence created a new kind of celebrity, one that attracted both admiration and constant scrutiny. By the time Priscilla knew him, this attention was something he lived with daily, but it had never become easy. Every move he made was watched, every decision discussed, and often judged. Inside his private world, she saw how structured everything truly was. His schedule was not just busy, it was tightly controlled. Film contracts required multiple projects within strict timelines, leading to long hours and roles that often felt repetitive rather than fulfilling. Music recordings had to fit around these demands, leaving little space for rest. Even at home, time was often spent recovering, not escaping. As the 1960s progressed, his film career brought financial success, but growing creative frustration. Many roles followed similar patterns, focusing more on maintaining his image than expanding his abilities. Priscilla noticed this over time, moments where he expressed dissatisfaction and a desire to reconnect with music in a deeper way. That shift became visible in 1968, when his televised comeback special, reignited his connection with live performance. For a while, there was renewed energy. He seemed more focused, more alive, returning to what first defined him. Soon, this led to regular performances, especially in Las Vegas, where he performed consistently for large audiences. But success brought its own weight. The demands of performing, travel, rehearsals, and late-night shows became part of his routine again, adding to an already heavy lifestyle. Priscilla saw the cycle clearly. The more success grew, the less time there was to recover. Alongside this, personal struggles became more visible. Elvis began relying on prescription medication, initially for pain, sleep, and the physical toll of his schedule. Over time, this shifted from support to dependence, affecting his energy and overall health. His daily life reflected extremes: irregular sleep, inconsistent habits, and cycles of intense activity, followed by long periods of isolation. Maintaining balance became difficult, both physically and emotionally. Yet, despite everything, his connection with his audience never faded. His performances remained powerful, and his commitment to fans was real. He continued to push himself, even when it came at a personal cost. To Priscilla, his life was a constant pull between public success and private strain. What the world saw as achievement, she saw as effort. And over time, that balance became harder to hold. The story only grows heavier from here, watching him fade away. As the years moved into the mid-1970s, the changes in Elvis Presley became harder to ignore. From Priscilla Presley's point of view, nothing happened suddenly. Instead, it unfolded slowly, through patterns, habits, and visible shifts that revealed a man struggling to keep up with the life he had carried for so long.
Even after their separation, she remained close enough to observe what was happening. The signs were clear to her, and they pointed towards something more serious than simple exhaustion.
Elvis continued performing during this time, especially through his Las Vegas residencies and nationwide tours. These shows demanded energy and consistency, but maintaining that pace was becoming increasingly difficult. Medical reports and biographical accounts noted several health issues, including high blood pressure, digestive problems, and chronic pain. These were managed with prescription medications, which had already become part of his everyday routine. From Priscilla's perspective, the concern was not just the medication itself, but the growing reliance on it. Different prescriptions were used to help him sleep, reduce pain, and sustain energy during demanding schedules. Over time, the number increased, and their combined effects became more noticeable. His appearance began to change. There were clear weight fluctuations, swelling, and a visible drop in physical energy. His movement slowed, and his stamina was no longer consistent. Daily habits also reflected this shift. His sleep remained irregular, often staying awake late at night and resting during the day. Eating patterns were inconsistent, sometimes excessive, other times completely absent. These routines made recovery from constant travel and performances even harder. Hospital visits became more frequent as 1977 approached. Records and close accounts confirmed multiple admissions for exhaustion, digestive complications, and issues linked to medication use. Each time there was temporary improvement, but the deeper problems remained. Despite everything, Elvis kept performing. His sense of responsibility to his audience never faded. Canceling shows was rare for him. Even when his condition affected his performance, he still appeared on stage, pushing through discomfort to meet expectations. Priscilla understood that this determination defined him. Performing was not just a career, it was part of his identity. Stepping away would have meant facing a reality he was not ready to accept. But from her perspective, continuing at that pace only added more pressure to an already fragile situation. There were also emotional pressures beneath the surface. Constant public attention, personal struggles, and the weight of expectation created stress that was not always visible. At times, even surrounded by people, he seemed isolated. For Priscilla, this realization came gradually. The patterns repeated, the signs grew clearer, and the temporary recoveries never lasted. By the time 1977 arrived, the warning signs were impossible to ignore. His body was under strain, his dependence had deepened, and the balance between health and career had nearly disappeared. And then, the moment came when everything stopped. The day everything stopped. August 16th, 1977 did not begin with shock. For Priscilla, it started like many other days, defined by distance, routine, and a quiet awareness that Elvis Presley's life had been under pressure for quite some time. By then, they were no longer married, but their connection remained. They shared a child, a long history, an ongoing communication that kept her aware of his condition, even from afar. That morning unfolded at Graceland, the place that once held their shared life. Elvis was preparing for another tour, continuing a schedule that had already placed heavy demands on his health. Those close to him reported that he had stayed awake most of the night, following the pattern that had shaped his routine for years. In the early hours, he went to his bedroom, accompanied by his fiancée. Later that day, he was found unresponsive in the bathroom. Emergency services were called immediately, and attempts to revive him began at once. He was rushed to Baptist Memorial Hospital in Memphis, where medical teams continued their efforts. Despite everything, he was pronounced dead that afternoon at the age of 42. For Priscilla, the news came directly, not through headlines, but as a personal message that carried finality. In that instant, distance no longer mattered. The man she had known as a husband, a partner, and the father of her child was gone. The official cause pointed to cardiac arrest, with underlying heart conditions contributing. Later findings also confirmed the presence of multiple prescription medications in his system, details that aligned with the pattern seen in the years before. What followed moved quickly. News of his passing spread across the United States and beyond within hours. Crowds gathered outside Graceland, drawn by disbelief, grief, and the need to be close to the place that defined him.
But for Priscilla, the focus was not on the public reaction. It was on their daughter, Lisa Marie Presley, only 9 years old at the time. Telling her required strength, clarity, and control.
Funeral arrangements were made swiftly. His body was returned to Graceland, where family and close friends said their goodbyes, followed by a public viewing attended by thousands. The procession through Memphis carried a silence that reflected the weight of the moment.
For Priscilla, that day became a dividing line between what was and what would come next. A chapter had closed, but its impact would never truly fade. Keep watching for the part we've been waiting for.
Carrying the legacy forward. In the days after Elvis Presley's death, the scale of public reaction became impossible to separate from personal grief. For Priscilla Presley, everything moved fast, yet nothing felt light. What began as a private loss quickly unfolded in front of the world, as thousands gathered, mourning someone who had felt like a constant presence in their lives. Graceland became the center of it all. Crowds filled the streets, leaving flowers, messages, and quiet tributes. The home that was once private now stood under constant attention. This shift brought a new responsibility. It was no longer just a place of memories. It had become a symbol people felt connected to. Managing that change required careful decisions, especially while emotions were still raw. At the same time, her priority remained clear: Lisa Marie Presley. At just 9 years old, she was facing a loss that was both deeply personal and publicly visible. Priscilla focused on giving her stability, maintaining structure in her life despite the overwhelming attention. It meant balancing public expectations with private care, creating space where her daughter could process everything in her own way. In the years following 1977, financial realities also surfaced. Despite Elvis's success, his estate faced challenges involving expenses and long-term sustainability. Graceland itself required significant upkeep. From Priscilla's perspective, these were not optional concerns. They demanded action to protect what had been built. In 1982, a major decision was made. Graceland was open to the public. This marked a turning point. Instead of remaining a costly private residence, it became a place where fans could visit and connect with Elvis's life. The plan was careful and structured, preserving the home while making it accessible. Over time, it grew into one of the most visited private homes in the United States, welcoming people from around the world. For Priscilla, this reflected a balance, preserving the past while adapting to the future. Beyond the house, she took an active role in protecting Elvis's legacy. This included overseeing how his image, music, and name were used, ensuring everything remained respectful and accurate. It was not just about memory, but about maintaining truth. As the years passed and she reached the age of 80, her perspective deepened. Time allowed reflection. She saw his life not as a single moment, but as a long process shaped by fame, pressure, and personal struggles. For her, the story never truly ended. It continued through memory, through legacy, and through the responsibility she carried forward. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next chapter.